Hello class, it's Mondragon here. We're going to begin on intercepts. Our objective for today is that students will be able to find the x and the y-intercepts, use them to graph their lines, and interpret their meaning in real-world situations. So let's begin first with our vocabulary. A y-intercept is the y-coordinate of the point where the graph intersects the y-axis. The x-coordinate of that point is always 0. Y-intercept intercepts the y-axis. Okay, that's the key word. X-intercept is the x-coordinate of the point where the graph intersects the x-axis. The y-coordinate of this point is always 0. X-intercept means that it intercepts the x-axis. Okay, so we're going to begin by finding the x and y-intercepts from our graph. Usually that's the simplest, finding it from a graph. Okay, x-intercept means that it intercepts the x-axis. So we're going to go to the x-axis and see where this line, my red line, it touches the x-axis. And if you notice, it touches it right there at the point -2, 0. And if you notice, the y is always 0, and the x-intercept is going to be -2. Now for the y-intercept, I'm going to look at the y-axis, and it touches it right here at the point 0, 1. So that means that my my y-intercept is 1. My x is 0. And my y is 1, so my y-intercept is 1. Now let's find the x and the y-intercepts from an equation. And the way to find the x-intercept is to make the y equal 0. And the way to find the y-intercept is to make the x equal 0. So we're going to begin with the x-intercept. We have to make y equal 0. So I get my function, and I write 5x minus 2 times 0, because that's what y is going to be, equals 10. If you notice, -2 times 0 here, this part that we filled in is just 0, so it's gone. We're left with 5x equals 10. And now I get to solve for x, so since I'm multiplying by 5, I divide by 5 on both sides, and x is equal to 2. So that means that my x-intercept is 2. And my point is going to be 2, 0. Now for the y-intercept, we have to make the x be 0. So I get my function, and I rewrite it. 5x, x is 0, minus 2y equals 10, and now I solve for y. 5 times 0 is just 0, so that's gone, and I'm left with -2y equals 10. Since I'm multiplying by a -2, I divide by a -2, and I get y equals 10 divided by -2 is a -5. So my y-intercept is -5, and the point would be my x is 0, and my y is -5. So that's where it would intersect my graph. Alright, now let's read this. It says, graphing a linear function. Remember that when you graph a linear function, or when you graph any line, you really only need 2 points. So it's easy to graph a line if all you know is the x and the y-intercepts. So that's what we're going to do for this problem down here. We're going to graph y equals -x plus 4, but in order to do that, we're going to just find the intercepts instead of finding 4 or 3 different ordered pairs. Alright, so I'm going to find the x-intercept first. And in order to find the x-intercept, I have to make the y equal 0. So that means that y is going to be 0 equal -x plus 4. In order to solve this, I have to move the 4 to the other side by subtracting 4. to both sides, I get negative 4 equals negative x. And since I have a negative x, I just need to change the sign to make that a positive. So this is now a positive 4, and that is now a positive x. So x is 4. That means that my x-intercept is 4, and the point that I have is going to be 4, 0. We're going to do the same thing, but this time look for our y-intercept. And the y-intercept, in order to find the y-intercept, I have to make x equal 0. So I grab my function, and I have y equals negative 0 plus 4. Well, this is just 0, so I have y equals 4. That means that my y-intercept is 4, and that the point here is going to be 0 for my x and 4 for my y. Now I'm able to graph this and find out what this line looks like. I have the point 4, 0, so I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4 and put a point right there, and I have the point 0, 4, so I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and that right there gives me the line that I'm looking for. So that right there is y equals negative x plus 4. And all I needed to do was find the x-intercept and the y-intercept, and that allowed me to graph my function. Alright, number 4 says find the x and the y-intercept from a table. So let's read our situation. It says Trish can run the 200-meter dash in 25 seconds. The function f of x equals 200 minus 8x gives the distance remaining to be run after x seconds. Given the table below, graph this function and find the intercepts. Okay, so first of all, let's see if our table will give us that. Our table has the point 0, 200, 5, 160, 10, 120, 20, 40, and 25, 0. If you look at a table, in order to find the x-intercept, you need to know when y equals 0. So here's my x, here's my y. I'm going to look and see where y is 0. So if I look over, y is 0 right here. So that means that my x-intercept is going to be 25. And now I'm going to do the same thing, but this time with my y-intercept. In order to find the y-intercept, I need to know when x is equal to 0. So I'm going to go to the x-axis, and it's 0 right here when y is 200. So it means that my y-intercept is 200. Okay, and that's looking at the table. But we also need to graph this, and I'm just going to do the positive quadrant, because if you notice, these points don't go past that. On my x-axis, I'm going to go up by 5s, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. But on my y-axis, I'm going to go up by 40, 40, 80, 120, 160, and 200. Now I'm going to plot these points. My first point is 0, 200, 5, 160, 10, 120, 20, 40, and 25, 0. And here is my line. Okay? And all I really needed was my x-intercept and my y-intercept, and I could have gotten this line. Right? Find the x and y-intercepts from a table. What does each intercept represent from that table? Well, we said that the x-intercept was 25. So if I look at my graph here, It's touching the x-axis right here at 25. So the x-intercept is 25. And we said that the y-intercept was 200. Alright, so looking back at the problem that we were talking about, what does the 25 represent and what does the 200 represent? Remember that our x is talking about the time that she's running in seconds, and the y is talking about the distance. So the time is the point 25, 0. So in 25 seconds, her distance is 0. So what does that mean? That means that it takes her 25 seconds to reach the end of the line. Because remember, we're talking about her running a 200-meter dash. Now for the y-intercept. For the y-intercept, we were at 200. And the y-intercept is talking about the distance. So we have the point 0, 200. 0 is talking about the time, and 200 is talking about the distance. So that means that in 0 seconds, she's at 200. So the 200 represents the starting line. She's starting 200 meters away from the end of the line. So that's what the x-intercept represents, the end of the line, and it takes her 25 seconds to get there, and that's what the 200 meters represents, the starting line where she begins her race. Okay, class, have a good day, and I will see you later.